Good morning, beautiful people of planet Earth and all other interdimensional entities and all sentient beings right across the cosmos and all aspects of the dreaming or natures of reality, depending on where you're at with reality, babies. So yes, I think I prefer the Native American and in particular the Ojibwa expression. Greetings to all our relations. That means animal, mineral, vegetable, humanoid, all existence that lives. Right, so today is and welcome also to Titania's realm at sacred space, or is it the other way around? Same deal really. Today is the 16th of April 2025. The time is 10:22 a.m. I'm doing a bit of a sneaky video because I have a debrief at 2, so I have to leave around about 1:15, 1:30. But anywho, having said that, got a couple of hours up my sleeve, so I thought I'll read to my wonderful YouTube subscribers and audience and whoever stumbles across these videos out on YouTube, out on the internet. I've just had a shower and washed my hair, so I'll probably need to brush it later. But anyway, while I'm air drying and getting all buffy, let us continue. The day John Lennon died twice. Mystery of coincidence. Beatle John Lennon once remarked that he attracted coincidences like a magnet. Eerily, these flukes of chance kept recurring to the day of his death. Just 7 minutes after an insane gunman, just annoyed about that area. It's always one that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Just a moment. Honestly, I don't know why that is. Anyway, where are we? That's why I could never be a television compere or anything like that. I'm too irritated by my accessories. Anyway, just 7 minutes after an insane gunman murdered Lennon on a New York street, a second John Lennon died in the celebrated singer's home city of Liverpool in England. Psychologist Carl Jung described such synchronicity, his name for coincidence, as the most powerful natural force in the universe. In Jung's view, synchronicity, mysterious in its workings, often alters the course of history and has the power to shape our lives. On 9th of December 1980, Liverpool time, a deranged assassin gunned down former Beatle John Lennon on New York's 72nd Street. Media outlets around the world paid tribute to Lennon, recognising him as one of the century's most important composers of popular music. I'll just share the photo on the facing page. From a son. But the Liverpool Echo, principal newspaper in the singer's 574,000 population home city, added something more. Initially unnoticed in the paper's Lennon-dominated page of classified death notices was a small advertisement marking the demise of a second John Lennon. This 56-year-old man, a kitchen porter at a Liverpool hostel, had also died on 9th of December, just 7 minutes after the murder of his famous namesake. His name was real, not adopted. Before long, mathematicians were being asked to calculate the odds against two John Lennons, both Liverpool men, expiring within minutes of each other on the same date. It's a bit astonishing, isn't it? In the words of a Russian proverb, women know that cherries will always crowd together in a cherry pie. The Austrian biologist Paul Kammerer managed to give scientific weight to this old saw. During the 1920s, with exemplary patience, he spent 7 to 8 hours daily sitting on park benches, scrupulously noting the age, sex, and type of clothing of passers-by, along with the shapes of their umbrellas, bags, and parcels. When he analysed his tables, he found that they showed the classic clustering patterns familiar to everyone, from gamblers to actuaries. Repeatedly over the months, Kammerer's graphs identified dense clusters of coats of the same colour, shoes of the same shape, and pedestrians of roughly the same age. In his resulting scientific paper, which Einstein praised as by no means absurd, Kammerer wrote, "The recurrence of identical or similar data in contiguous areas of space or time is a simple empirical fact which coincidence cannot satisfactorily explain." Death takes a holiday. On 1st of September 1946, the New York Times published a brief report headlined "Obit Editor Off, Deaths Stop." The story read, Mrs. Mildred West, whose duties on the Alton Evening Telegraph include the writing of obituaries, has been taking a week's vacation. And for the first time in the memory of her fellow workers on the newspaper, a week has passed with no deaths being reported in this city of 32,000. Normally 10 deaths occur on average every week. I somehow find that greatly amusing. Don't know why. She who, well, technically I've almost died 16 times if you count that bad fall where I cracked my head, but should have cracked it a whole lot harder, but the arm took the fall. We won't class it as a 16th near death though, because I didn't actually bang my head all that hard, and I didn't go into an out of body or near death experience, but I was in shock for about an hour and a half after. It was a great shock because it hurt like Hades, and I realised how close I came to splitting my skull in the vice had it not been that my arm caught it instead. So very fortunate that was it not? Longer continuance on this planet. Anyway, as I was determined, I slipped fourth base or home base into 60, and today I'm 60 years and 4 days old, and I'm not going to count the days of each day of the decade, people of Earth, but I'm just a little bit astonished, especially by recent events that were quite sadistic and harrowing. So there is that. 16th of April also happens to be that entity that haunts me with monotonous regularities. Birthday, in his last incarnation when I knew him. It was his birthday. Another Aries. Yes, we had a lot in common, but by the gods, he would try to annihilate me and I would just hold my own. And in the end, it didn't behoove him too well, since he died relatively young 63, I believe. Can't remember how old he was when he died. Does it really matter, people of Earth? Not really. But anyway, the man did a lot of drugs and smoked like a freight train, so, and fucked around like a sex addict, although maybe he was faithful to the last wife. One never knows, does one? Honestly. So anyway, in our beginnings are our endings. And happy birthday, motherfucker, wherever you are. You have to love. And anyway, on we go, living happily ever after. It was that. Freedom from our souls is a wonderful birthday gift. Just saying. Anyway, I have a feeling he'll pop in though. That's why I'm mentioning that it's his birthday, because synchronicities and he knows that I acknowledge his birthday, which is odd. Why do I acknowledge the birthdays even of my enemies? I guess there's kind of a psychic bond that develops when you love people, and then when it turns to contempt and disdain and hatred, the undercurrent of that is still actually love. So you can't quite kill it, because love is eternal, people of Earth. You carry it on into the next dimension wherever you go. That little tiny rice grain of love that you blew into the most fabulous gourmet meal that shriveled and withered and rotted away, still carries the seed to be conflagrated with the right person at the right time. And one day it might happen for the timing. But I don't wait around and too much in fairyland, although the Queen of the Fae would beg to differ. I can actually see her hand in things, being very protective of me. Daughter of the gods, what can I say? Didn't have loving, kind, protective, nurturing parents, so I have gods that protect and guide and inspire and motivate and lead me a merry dance at times, but I have to trust in their wisdom and judgment that they knew. They knew, as much as I tried to stay in denial, they knew who was not being, genuine and authentic and loyal and faithful to me, and was not suitable actually. But why that had to happen, I don't know. I asked them, they said some things have a higher plan and not for you to know, Tanya. But you performed your mission well, with grace and dignity, with honour and integrity, and it was hard. It was hard, because I wanted actually more with that person, and they teased me along at some points in time, quite mischievously, and I fell for the lure. Still in all, I had fun. I had a lot of fun, and there were good times. There were the best of times, there were the worst of times, and now I'm free in another paradigm to invite someone into my life who genuinely loves me. That's a nice little love story we tell ourselves. You know who has to genuinely love me the most? Me, myself and I. So I don't repeat that pattern ever again. Right. The awesome Apollo coincidence. Some synchronicities, however, are so breathtakingly extraordinary that it seems impossible to dismiss them as mere empirical facts. In 1994, the British scientific journal Nature published a letter from Andrew Scott pointing out strange links between the Apollo 2 moon landing 1969 and the three Shoemaker-Levy comet fragments, which crashed on Jupiter 1994. I'm laughing because yesterday I was reading the surname Nielsen, somebody called Nielsen. It was spelt a little bit differently, but that's my friend Jared's surname. And today I've been reminded of someone else. It's kind of comical, isn't it? Another little just a tiny thread of synchronicity flowing across time and space and the space-time continuum. Just a little tweak to remind me. Keep that little kernel of love alive and conflagrate it beautifully and magnificently with a man who loves me for real next time. Real love, honouring, juicy, passionate, romantic, devoted love. Not like a fucking lapdog, you know. I need an equal, but you know what I mean. Something really authentic. Someone I could actually go out with and do wonderful things with and enjoy their company. Right. Comet fragment number 1 struck Jupiter on the same day as Apollo 2 was launched, 25 years earlier. Comet fragment number 2 hit Jupiter 25 years to the minute after Apollo 2's astronauts landed on the moon. This fact was also noted by Arthur C. Clarke, author of 2001, A Space Odyssey. That's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. Comet fragment number 3 collided with Jupiter almost exactly 25 years after Apollo 2 lifted off from the lunar surface. All right. That's how is that possible that kept happening? It's a bit like I asked myself about my love life. How is that possible that keeps failing and it keeps involving entire groups of people all turning vicious and wanting my annihilation? For what? For what? Didn't do anything wrong actually. Didn't even have an affair with that man. Not a real affair anyway, just an emotional heart sickness and longing that was clearly one-sided, since it could end up so cruel. Anyway, how does that keep happening to me, people of Earth? Curious minds would like to know. Anyway, I'm okay staying on my own for the rest of my life, I think. I think I've demonstrated to the gods that human men are not safe for me, and not really genuinely ever. Not when it becomes a loving, romantic thing. They're okay to have as buddies or pals kept at arm's length, but try and bring them into the sexual sphere of my life. It always turns ugly. And even though I didn't have sex with that man, as soon as there was that kind of a flavour there, it turned rancid. Well, I wasn't going to have an affair with a married man and seed my soul, so there was that. And, I'm grateful that I didn't, because I would have just been used and shucked off like a dirty old rag, which happened anyway, actually, in many ways. So, that's life, people. That's life. So, let that happen to some other woman who's a bit, not self-aware and doesn't realise what she's playing into someone else's cruel game. Few coincidences, at least those we know about, resonate on so cosmic a scale. Through the years, hundreds of readers have kindly sent me letters describing synchronicities in their lives. These experiences are always small but fascinating nonetheless. In 1996, Pam Green wrote from Sydney. My ex-husband's date of birth was July 3, 1959, a fact whose significance you'll appreciate shortly. After we broke up, remaining friends, I'm happy to say, I was on my own for a couple of years. Then I met a man with whom I really clicked. On our first date, I discovered to my surprise that he was in the same line of rather specialised business as my ex-husband, though they didn't know each other. We're now sharing our lives, but it was only after we'd been together for a few months that I learned something which quite astonished me. He too was born on July 3rd, 1959. So he's the same age as my husband and in the same profession. It almost feels as if, while I'm starting a new life, some force is trying to haul me back into the old one. Never go backwards, people of Earth. Always keep moving forwards. Going back is a mistake. Dennis the Menace times 2. An eerie echoing of dates and names occurred in 1951 when 2 cartoon characters, each named Dennis the Menace, simultaneously began their careers on opposite sides of the Atlantic Ocean. Britain's Dennis appeared, and still does, in the comic paper Beano. America's Dennis started life as a syndicated newspaper strip. It was several weeks before the Americans and the Britons became aware that their newly minted Dennises had namesakes. The comic strip's creators were then confronted by the most stunning coincidence of all. The 2 characters had made their debuts on the same day, 12th of March, 1951. Another case in which a name created synchronous echoes was described by the French physicist Jacques Vallée. During the 1970s, he became interested in a Los Angeles cult, the Order of Melchizedek, named after a minor biblical prophet. Hoping to find references to Melchizedek, Vallée visited a public library without success. Several days later, he took a cab to Los Angeles airport and on arrival asked the female driver for a receipt. She tore a slip from her book and signed it M. Melchizedek. Vallée was impressed by the coincidence, but surmised that the surname might be common among certain migrants. On returning home, he checked the massive multi-volume Los Angeles telephone directory. It listed only one Melchizedek, his cab driver. In recalling this experience, Vallée imagines a situation in which a librarian has to decide between 2 methods of storing books, either alphabetically or as a jumble. If she chooses the latter system, she might ensure that each randomly arranged volume has a beeper fitted to its spine. It will respond to a signal by making a sound to advertise its position. Possibly, says Vallée, this is a rough simulation of how the universe operates, with beepers sometimes responding to our signals and creating what we understand as coincidences. But he concedes that it's only a theory. Many synchronicities involve the seemingly pointed linkage of words to an event, as in the case of John Steinbeck's burning books. A truck loaded with several thousand copies of the author's latest novel flipped over and burst into flames after it was struck by a bus running out of control. The novel's title, The Wayward Bus. Lennon's line of nines. John Lennon was convinced with some justification that the number 9 played a peculiarly synchronistic role in his life. In media interviews, he returned repeatedly to the subject. Lennon was born on 9th of October, as was his son, Sean. Brian Epstein first saw the Beatles perform at the Cavern, 9 letters, on 9th of November 1961. The Beatles signed their first recording contract with EMI on 9th of May 1962. The group's debut recording, Love Me Do, was numbered 4949 on Parlophone. Lennon wrote 3 of his songs, Number 9 Dream, Revolution 9, and One After 909, at his mother's house, 9 Wavertree Road, Liverpool. He believed this address had favourable aspects. Wavertree and Liverpool each have 9 letters. He met Yoko Ono on 9th of November 1966. The numerical coincidences continued to the time of his death and beyond. The gunman Mark Chapman shot Lennon in New York on 8th of December 1980, but the 5-hour time difference meant it was 9th of December in Liverpool. An ambulance took the singer's body to the Roosevelt, 9 letters, hospital on 9th Avenue. Electrifying odds. In 1989, a chain of coincidence involving a nursing sister and her 2 adult daughters extended across 3 American cities. The synchronous events were set in motion when Gloria Patterson of Baltimore was woken by thunder and pounding rain. Unable to sleep, she switched on a bedside lamp and television set. Lightning then struck the house, popping the light bulb and shorting the TV. Distressed, Mrs. Patterson rang her elder daughter Mary in Phoenix. She was shocked to learn that Mary's house also had been struck by lightning. A TV and video recorder had been ruined, and a fireball was hovering around a skirting board socket. Mother and daughter chatted for a while, then said good night. As Mrs. Patterson was settling back to sleep, she received a call from her other daughter, Susan, in Bel Air. The young woman reported that lightning had just struck her chimney, scattering bricks across the sitting room. Lightning seemingly refuses to leave some people alone. I had a friend on Pal Talk. Her nickname was, they were transgender. But anyway, their nickname was De Nature of Detray. She was a big Casey fan. Anyway, they had been struck by lightning 12 times. 12 fucking times. Imagine that. Anyway. Roy Sullivan, a US park ranger, had continuous millions-to-one brushes with shocks from the sky. The Guinness Book of Records chronicles his high-voltage history. In 1942, a lightning bolt sheared off his big toenail. Ouch! In 1969, I shouldn't laugh, it's not funny, but ouch! In 1969, lightning removed his eyebrows. The following year, it seared his shoulder, and a bolt in 1972 set his hair ablaze. Sullivan was struck again in 1973, 1976, and 1977. But when he died in 1982, lightning was not to blame. An extremely odd lightning coincidence befell Jenny Roberts while she was holidaying with her husband on Queensland's South Stradbroke Island in October 1991. She was sunbathing on a rubber mattress when she was struck by a surge of power that entered her body through her watch band and burned a trail to her toes. The rubber mattress saved her life. My goodness. The lightning also burned a hole through the book Jenny Roberts was reading. Its title, The Dead Zone by Stephen King. The book's cover shows a man being struck by lightning. Case of the dumbstruck donor. A coincidence that focused laser-like on the three people involved was chronicled by The Times UK on 31st of December 1998. Vladimir Guseyev, a pseudonym, was in the habit of walking his dog every morning before leaving for work. He began to notice a pretty young woman who proceeded regularly in the other direction, taking her infant son to a nursery. Vladimir plucked up courage to talk to the woman, who seemed happy to tell him she was divorced. They began to keep company and soon married. From the beginning, mutual friends remarked on the little boy's striking resemblance to Vladimir. The local optometrist even pointed out that the child suffered a minor eye defect similar to his stepfather's. It was this final jigsaw piece of information that prompted Vladimir to consider a wild possibility. The previous year, he had donated sperm at a fertility clinic. His wife had told him that months before the separation, her former husband had agreed that she be artificially inseminated. Vladimir dared to wonder whether his stepson, offspring of a woman he had met randomly in the street, might be his own natural child. A DNA test confirmed that his hunch was correct. Destiny, people of Earth. Destiny. Another interesting example of synchronous relationships can be found in William Manchester's American Caesar, 1978. He reveals that three principal figures of World War II, Prime Minister Winston Churchill, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and General Douglas MacArthur, were all descended from a Mrs. Sarah Belcher of Taunton, Massachusetts. General MacArthur just happened to be an eighth cousin of Winston Churchill and a sixth cousin, once removed, of FDR. What's the odds of that, people of Earth? Very astonishing too. Right. Close by, when 3 presidents were shot. By a fluke of chance, Abraham Lincoln's son, Robert, was at the scene when 3 presidents fell victim to assassins. He was present on 15th of April, 1865, when his father, wounded by John Wilkes Booth's bullet, lost his struggle for survival. On 2nd of July, 1881, Robert Lincoln was with the President James A. Garfield at Washington's Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station when Garfield was gunned down. He was at the stricken president's side within seconds. On 6th of September 1901, President William McKinley was attending the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo when a gunman fatally wounded him. Robert Lincoln was on a train arriving in Buffalo when the shooting occurred. He hurried to comfort the president, who died 8 days later. More than a century after Abraham Lincoln's death, students of synchronicity began to point out the strange pattern of coincidences that seemed to link him to assassinated President John F. Kennedy. Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846, Kennedy in 1946. Lincoln was elected president in 1860, Kennedy in 1960. Both men were strongly concerned with civil rights. The wives of Lincoln, I'm nodding because I approve of that, that's what that meant. Also, astonishing that they had similar, belief systems and ideologies. The wives of Lincoln and Kennedy lost children while living in the White House. Both presidents were shot in the head from behind on a Friday with their wives at their side. Chilling coincidence there. The car in which Kennedy died was a Ford Lincoln. Lincoln was shot in Ford's theatre. John Wilkes Booth, who killed Lincoln, was born in 1839. Lee Harvey Oswald, who killed Kennedy, was born in 1939. Both assassins were known by their 3 names, each set of which comprises 15 letters. Booth ran from the theatre and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theatre. Both assassins were killed before they could be tried. Shortly before Lincoln died, he was in Monroe, Maryland. Shortly before Kennedy was shot, he was visiting Marilyn Monroe. Both presidents were warned of danger. Lincoln's secretary, who was named Kennedy, begged him not to go to the theatre. Kennedy's secretary, who was named Lincoln, implored him to stay away from Dallas. Both men were assassinated by Southerners. Both men were succeeded by Southerners. Both successors had the surname Johnson. Lincoln's successor, Andrew Johnson, was born in 1808. Kennedy's successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, was born in 1908. Just gives you chills all through your body. Synchronicities there. Astonishing. Almost like perhaps Kennedy had been a reincarnation of Abraham Lincoln. All the similarities, just amazing. I'm delighting in my dahlia out there. I haven't picked the second one. I picked the first one, and that bloom is slowly dying, but even dying looked exquisite. Do you want to see it? Such a beautiful light flowing all over it this morning. I'm really taking note of light and shadow, being very sensitive to tones and shade, and I'm just fully alive right now, people of Earth. Just not bad for a woman who used to be a zombie and has just undergone a heartbreak. I'm doing okay, kids. I guess deep down I knew I was always going to be just, just a pawn in someone else's little game, which they won't win, by the way, because the only way to win a game is not to play, and I don't even know what that was all about, to be honest. It's just kind of pointless. But anyway, let me find that photo of that lovely. Here it is. Can you see it? Oh yeah, there we go. I wrote, "My dahlia bloom is dying, yet she is still exquisite, suffused in light and shadow, drifting in an ocean of sun refractions and dark matter, voyaging to the return." So I'm admiring the one that's still attached to its actual stem and leaves and its full vitality. I'm just going to leave it there. Leave it there to thrive, people of Earth. It's all about the thriving and staying alive and enjoying every moment, living, loving, breathing, sometimes dancing and washing your way through life. Am I right? Je ne regrette rien. I came in clean and clear, and I've left clean and clear. Content with my own holding my own line, staying in my own honour and integrity, not being sullied too much by other people's malfeasances, as it were. The magical notepad, a synchronicity of names which Carl Jung might have described as significant and life-shaping, is described by the American writer Stephen Diamond in his book What the Trees Said, 1971. The author recalls how, with only $10 in his pocket, he spent an idyllic weekend with a girlfriend in San Francisco. It was, he says, a strange and wonderful meeting of body and mind under the watchful eyes of the eucalyptus trees. Anxious to obtain a notebook to record his experiences, Diamond went to the local drugstore but left empty-handed. Walking back to the house, he noticed a paper notepad lying face down on a pile of old clothes and books. He picked up the pad and tore off the first few pages, which were caked with mud. The rest of the 200 sheets were clean and ready to use. It was a doctor's pad. At the top of each page was printed the name Stephen Diamond, MD. Writer Stephen Diamond was shaken by this coincidence of names. I took it as a sign, he says, a road marker which seemed to indicate that I was on the right track in that search for healing and the essence of my former self. The Uncanny Visitor. Geoffrey Symonds, chairman of the British publishing house W.H. Allen, had long been fascinated, largely as a bystander, by cases of synchronicity. In 1950, he encountered the phenomenon on a powerfully personal level. The experience inspired him to send a letter to the author, Agatha Christie, who published it in the Times. A copy was subsequently lodged in the files of the Society for Psychical Research. Geoffrey Symonds said, "My purpose in writing is to put on record for you something that happened to me which is, in many ways, more puzzling than anything similar I have read about. I have been a publisher for 25 years. During this time I have had occasion only once to pulp a book. For a time after the war, a subsidiary company of ours published some Tarzan books in paperback. As near as I can recollect, the year was perhaps 1950. A letter reached me from a very irate lady who wrote that she had always regarded the Tarzan books as suitable for children, but she was disgusted to discover that they were filled with descriptions of sex and flagellation, and how dare we publish such filth? The explanation for this outburst was that the Tarzan books were produced for us by a small printer, who also happened to print books which, by the standards of the time, were considered pornographic. He had mistakenly bound the pornography in the Tarzan's covers, and vice versa. He suggested that we pulp the books, and he would print new ones. I asked our production manager whether he knew a firm that could do the pulping job. He said he did not, adding that he had never needed to pulp a book during his 40 years in publishing. By an unusual chance, a young boy from our warehouse was delivering a message to the production manager at that very time. He told me he lived in Battersea and that there was a firm called Phillips Mills, of which I had not then heard. Using the production manager's telephone, I asked our switchboard operator to look up their number and telephone them for me. She replied, "Their representative is here." I thought at first that she was joking, but in fact the Phillips Mills representative had walked in literally seconds before I spoke to the operator. He was an old man and told me that my office was on his beat. Apart for a short time when he was ill, he had passed this office every day for years, but had never before called in. I asked him what had made him call in now. He said he did not know. Something just told him to do so. Incidentally, he never called again, as far as I am aware. The amazing implications of this string of coincidence will not be lost on you. Telepathy can explain why the man called in, but in order for it to have operated, he had to be passing at the very instant I wanted him, having just heard of this firm on the one and only occasion I needed him. Was this preordained? At the very least, there was some extraordinary chain of circumstances working in my favour. But why should it be so for something so seemingly unimportant? After all, it would have made no material difference if I had had to telephone Phillips Mills and their representative had visited me the following week. If there are helpful forces operating in unimportant matters, might they not also be operating, unknown to me, in important cases? How much control do we have over our own destiny? Curious minds want to know that. She who has almost died 15, on technicality almost 16 times. How much control do I have over my destiny anyway? Especially with all the game players and tricksters that have come into my life surrounding love interest. It's just been completely fucking weird. People have had enough to give me a breakdown actually. Just that it's a constant repeating emotional bloodletting torture instrument, quite frankly. But anyway. I had so many people try to lure me away from that club that I do still cherish and love. And some of them were actually former enemies of mine, current enemies of mine. So I found it highly suspicious, and now it all begins to make sense. They thought I was some kind of female wicker man, some fucking sacrifice. Nuh-uh, fools. You're dealing with a daughter of the gods. Picked the wrong target there, just saying. Anyway, it's almost comical now. I kind of have to laugh. Carl Jung suggested that curious coincidences of this kind might be the work of a cosmic joker, a being or force whose sole motivation is to make sport with our lives. Indeed. But some physicists believe that the explanation of synchronicity may lie within ourselves. Might it be, they ask, that our human consciousness continually creates the realities surrounding us, and that coincidences are therefore no more than the physical products of our thoughts? A little bit of gaslighting and victim blaming there, because I don't think that's always the case. But there could be an element of that at times, things becoming a self-defeating purpose, since you see the same pattern arising and the same deception and the same being held at arm's length and not being told the truth, the same modus operandi, and the rescuers jumping in because they can see the pattern too, and they genuinely love you and they don't want to see you be destroyed by someone else's sick, perverted, sadistic little games. There were a few little earth angels and rescuers that came to my side in the last 20 months, and I kind of looked at them with circumspection and wondered if they were just playing good cop, bad cop, and luring me into a false sense that I did indeed have backup and support. But ultimately, the backup and the support came from my angels and my gods and the good people who always have my back. sometimes at the 11th hour when I'm being throttled by some maniac, but they've always brought me through. So I have absolutely nothing to worry about there and have perfect faith in the multiverse. Because on some weird cosmic level, I know that the multiverse has perfect faith in me. I've seen it too many times. So I just hold my head high and walk on with grace and dignity, knowing that I have fulfilled my mission, even though it feels unfulfilled and I will never get closure. I have achieved what I was sent to be, whatever it was I was being sent on, because a lot of it I wasn't actually all that consciously aware of, like when I was under direct orders to gift everyone presents and with my silversmithing and to show that my love is real and my intentions are honourable, and I wanted to gift them talismans of protection, actually. Not just from, the circles they move in, but from the great evil that crawls upon our globe now. So blessed be my beautiful ones. I still love you all, even though disappointed by some of you. I still love you all, and know that you are protected by me and my angels and my gods. Whether you honour that or not, it's beside the point. That was my intention, so may it be. Curious case of the mirror image murders. Strange similarities between two murders committed 157 years apart have intrigued British police. Birmingham detectives noticed the coincidences when they glanced over yellowing crime files during an office clear-out. The antique records showed that the rape strangling of a young woman near the village of Eddington in 1817 was identical in numerous details to a killing at the same spot in 1974. In both cases, a man named Thornton was arrested, tried, and acquitted. So many other synchronicities linked the two cases that the detectives compiled a dossier. Its principal points: the body of the first victim, 20-year-old Mary Ashford, was found in long grass on 27th of May, 1817. On 27th of May, 1974, the body of Barbara Forrest, also 20, was found 360 metres from where Mary died. The young women are thought to have shared the same birthday. Both had died at approximately the same time of day. On the eve of their murders, both had visited a friend's house to change before going to a dance. From 8 p.m. until midnight on 26th of May 1817, Mary danced and drank with a young bricklayer, Abraham Thornton. Afterwards, he walked her home. From 9 to 11 p.m. on 26th of May 1974, Barbara danced at the parish hall, built within metres of the hall where Mary had spent her final evening. Hours after Mary was found, Abraham Thornton was arrested and charged with murder. Hours after Barbara was found, police arrested a man also named Thornton, with whom she had worked at a charity accommodation home. In August 1817, the first Thornton appeared at Warwick Assizes Court and was acquitted on all charges. In March 1975, the second Thornton faced a judge in a Birmingham court and was also acquitted on all charges. So they both got away with the murder and rape of these beautiful girls. Hyenas, isn't it? Utterly bloody hyenas. Right, the next story, where are we? We're 1 hour in. Well, how long is this one? Let me just check because I do have an appointment. So, right, we've got time for one more story. Crime Queen died with her own tale untold. Agatha Christie. And there's a photo of her in the middle of this book. It's the last photo here. Here's the photo of Mark Chapman that murdered John Lennon. And here's the photo of Agatha Christie. When the best-selling crime novelist Agatha Christie mysteriously disappeared, newspapers worldwide speculated that she had been abducted or committed suicide. More than 15,000 volunteers scoured countryside surrounding the vanished writer's house. Hundreds of police across Britain and Europe followed a tangle of trails and questioned numerous witnesses, but could find no key to the case. After 11 days, during which her husband came under increasing suspicion of murder, Agatha Christie was found at last. From this point, however, the puzzle only deepened. Christie adamantly refused to tell anyone, relatives and detectives included, what had befallen her or where she had been. Almost half a century after her disappearance, Agatha Christie died. Her secret was buried with her. The marriage of Colonel Archibald Christie and his wife Agatha was not a happy one. He was a much decorated flying hero of World War I, a stern, no-nonsense military man who tended to speak in monosyllables. Oh, I was married to a moron like that too. Couldn't string a sentence together. Agatha, by contrast, was a romantic creature, described by one friend as sensitive and imaginative, with a hunger for affection that she too seldom received. Same dynamic as what happened with my marriage. Agatha, born, although my husband was no hero of any wars and was just a... Well, we don't need to go there now, do we? 30 years later. Let it go. Let it go. Agatha, born in Torquay, England, to a wealthy and loving American father and his English wife, married Archibald on Christmas Eve, 1914. It's an unusual day to get married, isn't it? While he fought with distinction in the Royal Flying Corps, she served as a nurse. It was during her assigned time in the dispensary that she acquired the knowledge of drugs and poisons that would benefit her so richly as a writer. In 1919, Agatha and her husband announced the birth of their daughter, Rosalind. By this time, Archibald had left the Flying Corps to work for a London firm of financiers. Many marriages founder on the rocks of monetary argument, and it was the financial difficulties that helped sunder the Christies. In their case, however, the problem was not too little cash, but too much. In 1920, while recovering from an illness, Agatha produced her debut detective novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. She sold the book to the first publisher she approached. It was such a commercial and critical success that she proceeded at white heat to write more. By the time the couple celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary, Agatha's novels were selling in phenomenal numbers, making her an ever richer woman. Archie, by contrast, was receiving a merely adequate salary in the city. He was a proud, unbending man. Friends sensed that he was having difficulty coping with his wife's extremely public prosperity. The money went to Agatha's head, and she wasted thousands on ill-advised investments and purchases. But she had always been a generous soul, bless her heart, and she never ceased to press gifts and luxuries on her spouse. Archie, the kind of man who would rather be the condescending giver than the humble recipient, began to spend much more of his time on the golf course. In 1926, the couple, or more accurately, Agatha, bought a 12-bedroom mansion amid sweeping formal gardens in Sunningdale, Berkshire. 12 bedrooms. There's a lot of cleaning and dusting people there. She would have had servants because she was wealthy, so that's okay there. Visitors envied the Christies for their seemingly idyllic lives. Hard to find true friends when you're deemed to be wealthy, by the way. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt too when I was newly married and we inherited and had a freehold home. Oh, the viciousness I encountered then. I still encounter viciousness, even though I'm poor. Oh, the irony. But I'm not responsible for other people's empty, vapid, soulless lives and beige existence and envy and spite. That's on them, people of Earth. Their filth to clean up. Not mine. I kicked all that away from the curb. But it does astonish me how people are envious of me, really. A woman who sits alone in Housing Commission on a disability pension, makes a bit of jewellery from, a few bits of silver spoons that I can acquire, and fights her way with her little quirks and her little artistry and her wild dance, and yet people were so envious and spiteful yet again that they veritably wanted to destroy me. Sad asses. Really quite sad. I mean, you have to laugh. Anyway, it was apparent to few that there was a worm in the apple. Archibald Christie was now spending most of his spare time outside the house. He had become deeply and romantically involved with Nancy Neely, a member of the golf club. Agatha found out. On the morning, 3rd of December, 1926, she angrily confronted her errant husband. He admitted the affair and, in the heat of the row, demanded a divorce, which would free him to marry his lover. Moreover, he would spend that weekend with Nancy. Agatha never revealed to anyone how distressed she was when her husband slammed out of the house. quite clear he didn't ever actually love her anyway. If you're cheating, you're not really loving your spouse. You're just looking for ways out. You find one, and then you try and destroy the new woman, the woman after that, the woman after that, because ultimately it's their ugly soul. It's got nothing to do with the woman at all, really. It takes time for women to find that gnosis, doesn't it? It really does. But the servants were in no doubt about the deep hurt she was feeling, which is understandable. She had a child to whom they'd been married for many years. It's the disloyalty that hurts more than anything else. Anyway, wealthy and lionised though she was, she remained a fragile and emotionally vulnerable person. 2 maids and a gardener were the last people to see her that night. She went upstairs to kiss her sleeping daughter, then packed a few possessions in a bag, went out to her 4-seater Morris car and drove away into the winter darkness. It's a bit shitty to leave your child behind, mind you. Anyway, when she was absent from breakfast next morning, the servants raised the alarm. Archibald Christie, remorseful about his harsh words and fearful that his wife might have harmed herself, hurried home. Local police quickly found the car, abandoned at a chalk pit only half a mile from the house. Its ignition was switched on, the front wheels suspended perilously over the edge of a 35-metre drop. On the back seat were a fur coat and several other items of clothing. However, there was no sign of the missing woman. If Agatha had suicided, she hadn't done it here. With 3 rival police forces in the south of England competing to find her, and European police on alert, the disappearance of Agatha Christie dominated the daily news. In what was possibly the biggest missing person hunt in British history, hundreds of uniformed officers, aided by more than 15,000 volunteers, scoured the Surrey Downs. They were under official instruction to look for a body. Police divers spent numbing hours searching the bottom of Silent Pool, a dark, deep lake in which several locals had sunk to their deaths. The missing writer had used this bleak stretch of water in one of her novels, drowning a character in its Stygian deeps. Investigators had good reason for surmising that Agatha might be dead. Before she vanished, she had written several confusingly contradictory letters. In one, to her brother-in-law, she claimed she was off to Yorkshire for a holiday, but in another, to local police, she said she feared for her life. As hours of effort fruitlessly passed, police attitudes began to harden toward Archibald Christie. The fact that he was seeing another woman had attracted their suspicions from early in the investigation. Detectives now regarded him as a prime murder suspect and were granted permission by a magistrate to tap his phones and covertly follow him wherever he went. All the evidence pointed to Christie. He stood to inherit a considerable sum from his wife's will, a will she would certainly have changed when divorce proceedings began. Christie might well have seen this as a last window of opportunity to strike. The Colonel did little to help himself in the courts of police and public opinion. He blundered through the crisis, making statements that ranged from the inept to the seemingly detached. He told the Daily Mail that his wife had actually spoken to him in the past about the possibility of disappearing, observing that the sensation it would create might give her usable atmosphere for a novel. It was typical of Agatha's theatrics, he suggested, that she should leave her card dangling dramatically above a chalk pit. None of these observations played well with the British mind. In the minds of many there was every possibility that Archie Christie was a killer. Newspapers, after all, were darkly hinting as much. It all made perfect sense. The other woman, the fortune he had surely hoped would soon be his. Why didn't the police arrest him at once? The unfortunate Christie's accusers were eventually proved wrong. On 14th of December, a head waiter took steps to save the Colonel's diminishing reputation. The man rang police from the hotel where he worked, the Hydro in Harrogate, Yorkshire, to say that an attractive red-haired woman who had booked in several days earlier was, almost certainly in his view, the missing author. Several guests who had pored over her pictures in the newspapers agreed. Police, a swarm of reporters and photographers in their wake, rushed to the hotel, which was 400 kilometres from the Christie's mansion. Detectives interviewed the woman who was registered under the name Teresa Neely. The coincidence was too great. Neely was the surname of Colonel Christie's lady friend. Moreover, Teresa, as one newspaper pointed out, was an anagram of teaser, a playful linguistic joke typical of Agatha Christie. A police car ferried Archibald Christie to the hotel. To his immense relief, he was able to step out of the shadow of the gallows by identifying Teresa Neely as his wife. He later confided to friends that while his concern for Agatha's welfare had been paramount, he had been haunted also by a more selfish fear. Had she never been found, the circumstantial evidence might have placed a noose around his neck. From the moment he saw his wife again, Archibald Christie became the protective husband he should have been all along, forbidding the milling journalists to venture anywhere near Agatha and answering their questions about what might be ailing her with a shrug and the single word, amnesia. Here's a photo of the Daily Mirror's coverage of her going missing. With press cars in pursuit, Agatha and Archie travelled by taxi to her sister's house in Cheadle, Cheshire. When they arrived, the family turned the press away again. The next day, papers published a range of sour grape stories for which Agatha Christie never forgave them. More than one writer echoed Archie's suggestion that she might cynically have staged her disappearance to gather material for a forthcoming novel. Others accused her of concocting a publicity stunt. Some of these unfriendly articles were transparently designed to flush Agatha out. In defending herself, the editors hoped she would be forced to explain what really had happened. She was too intelligent to take the bait, but the papers speculated anyway. She had intended to kill herself by driving her car at high speed over the chalk pit's edge, but her resolve had failed her at the last moment. She had, as her husband suggested, suffered an amnesia attack, waking up en route to the hotel where she consciously and poignantly chose her rival's surname as a pseudonym. spraying bloody poison on the verge. I was just saying to Jared, I thought about getting more chickens, but that poison they spray is what killed all my chickens. I had no idea. I only realised it recently, seeing them spraying for weeds, that drifting across, and my beautiful birds eating them was what was actually killing them. Bastards. Absolute bastards. What can you do? It's not going to bring the chickens back, is it? Grieving over it still to this day. But at least I got to see, again, proof. That's what's killing them. She knew precisely what she was doing and had I got chills of horror just sweeping through me. Just beyond awful. It really is. She knew precisely what she was doing and had staged the disappearance in a desperate bid to win her husband's sympathy and bring him home. Some confidants of the Christie family, one journalist reported, believed there was a far stranger and more sinister reason for the vanishing, a reason which, if known, would have shocked Britain. Just watching poisoning the opposite side now. Dear Goddess. 3 years after Agatha Christie became the focus of one of her nation's most tantalising mysteries, Archie won his divorce and married Nancy Neely. At age 40, Agatha, too, remarried, becoming the wife of an archaeologist, Sir Max Mallowan. The partnership was happy. Bless her, she deserves to be happy after being married to an unkind bastard all those years. She travelled with her new husband to sites around the world, using some of the settings in her novels. I always dreamed of travelling to all the wonderful sacred sites around the world, potentially with a new partner too, but that didn't manifest. Anyway, it would take a lot of money. It would have to be a man of some means and someone in love with me, so it's a nice little fantasy, but we can let that one wave goodbye to. However, the public remained insatiably curious about what had befallen her in December 1926. Before agreeing to grant any journalist an interview, the novelist habitually extracted a promise that the question would not be asked. The attack then came from another quarter. On the 50th anniversary of that bizarre series of unexplained events in Berkshire, Warner Brothers released a film, Agatha, starring Dustin Hoffman and Vanessa Redgrave. A disclaimer appeared in the opening credits, but an incautious moviegoer might forgivably have believed that the movie was revealing the true story behind the disappearance. Agatha Christie, to whom personal privacy had always been of paramount importance, took the studio to court to prevent the film from being shown. The judge found against her. During her long professional career, Agatha Christie wrote 80 novels which, in English and other languages, sold an extraordinary 2 billion copies, more than Shakespeare. However, the book which the world was particularly impatient to read was her promised autobiography, which, she had decreed, could only be published posthumously. After she died, in January 1976, the autobiography duly appeared, but nowhere within it was the smallest reference to those 11 days of mystery. You go, girl. Keep 'em guessing. Take 'em nowhere. Give 'em nothing. Leave 'em hanging on. Agatha even left her daughter in the dark. In 1984, Rosalind authorised Janet Morgan to write a searching study of her mother's life. Morgan discovered a great deal. But on the issue of the disappearance, she conceded defeat. Gaps remain in the story. No one knows why Agatha fled on the night of 3rd of December. We simply do not know what she planned to do, if indeed she had any plans, at all. Right, we've got time for one more story, I believe. Almost ploughed through this wonderful book, people of Earth. The Strange Secret of Sirius C. In 1995, 2 French astronomers announced that they had recorded perturbations around Sirius, one of the stars closest to Earth. It's also called the dog star. These disturbances, they opined, could indicate the presence of a 3rd star in the Sirius system. If such a sun exists, its discovery will reverberate far beyond astronomy. The reason lies in the 5,000-year-old teachings of a West African tribe, the Dogon, whose ancient maps, drawn on a host of artifacts, actually show twin suns orbiting Sirius. Only one of these suns, dwarf star Sirius B, is presently known to us. But according to Dogon lore, the second satellite sun is there also. Its existence was revealed to the tribe long ago by people from the sky. If this 3rd star is found and photographed, it will confront us with a profound question. Are the Dogon's ancient tales mere myths or an accurate description of a visitation from the stars? The French anthropologist Dr. Marcel Griot was loved and respected by the people of the West African Dogon tribe. After he had lived among them for 16 years, sharing their caves and hillside huts, they conferred upon him a privilege never previously offered to an outsider. At dawn one day in July 1947, the 4 highest priests woke Griot and led him on a 2-hour walk to the Dogon people's most sacred place. Here the holy men revealed to him the history of the Dogon, a saga which had begun in antiquity more than 5,000 years before. Griot at first was confident that he was hearing nothing more than a myth. The Dogon's description of a visitation at what they called the beginning of time by the Nomo, fish-like beings from the sky, seemed to bear little relation to reality. But then the priests began to illustrate their chanted narrative by scratching pictures in the sand with sticks. Griot recognized the formal representations immediately. They appeared on a range of tribal artifacts, ranging from carved statues and woven blankets to masks and pottery. Now, however, he was being offered a new interpretation of what the patterns signified. The Nomo, said the priests, had revealed that they came from a world far away, a world whose sun was brightly prominent in the night sky. The sun's name was Siji Tolo. Orbiting it were two lesser suns. The first, Po Tolo, was named after a tiny grain. This small white star, the heaviest object in creation, was composed of a dense metal called Sagala and orbited the principal star once every 50 years. The third star in the system, only 1/4 as dense as its orbiting companion, was called Emi-Ya, the sun of women. In turn, Emi-Ya was orbited by a planet, the world from which the Nomo had journeyed to Earth, arriving amid flame and thunder. Griot's research had suggested years earlier that the Dogon were of Egyptian descent and had lived in Libya for a time before settling in Mali. The priest's drawings of the visiting fish beings strongly resembled images in the cultures of Babylonia, Sumer, and ancient Egypt. Like the merfolk of Western legend, the Nomo were amphibians who, the priests claimed, could only survive for a short time on land before being forced to retreat underwater. Also, intriguing to the anthropologists were the tribe's star maps, with their two satellites invisible from Earth, orbiting a large sun. It was obvious to him that the sun depicted in these charts must be Sirius, bright in the clear African sky. Griot wrote to Paris requesting an astronomical atlas. When the volume, battered and stained, arrived weeks later, he was disappointed. Sirius was alone in its solar system. It had no satellites. So much for the Dogon stories, perhaps. But, recognizing that the book, presumably taken from his employer's library shelf, was out of date, Griot ordered something more modern from a Paris bookstore. After a further month of waiting, his patience was rewarded. The recently published atlas revealed that Sirius, 8.6 light-years from Earth, did indeed have an orbiting companion, but only one, not two, as in the Dogon legend. This dense dwarf star moved in a 50-year elliptical orbit around its mother sun, as the priests, quite astonishingly, had described. The dwarf also fitted the Dogon description of a star that rotated on its axis and was white and enormously heavy. Griot, isolated in Western Africa though he was, laboriously acquired further books and journals. They confirmed that the facts about Sirius B had not been known or understood until the early decades of the 20th century. Could it be possible, he wondered, that the tribe's knowledge of the dwarf star predated modern astronomy by thousands of years? Griol's anthropological research took a new direction. In 1950, with his scientific colleague Germain Dieterlen, he published the paper, A Sudanese Sirius System. It created few ripples. In 1956, Dr. Marcel Griol died in Paris of a heart attack. He was 58. The Dogon tribespeople showed their respect by staging a prolonged funeral tribute. 9 years later, Griol's book, Le Renard Pâle, The Pale Fox, co-authored with Germain Dieterlen, was published in France. The two authors devoted much of the work to a detailed analysis of the Dogon's mystifyingly accurate astronomical beliefs. They asked how a tribal society could possibly possess such sophisticated insights into the mechanics of a neighbouring solar system, and how that society had managed to acquire complex knowledge of the nature and behaviour of dwarf stars. Just a moment. Why are you here, Davidson? Go back to the light. One hour and 36 minutes. Probably I'm getting tired and picking up on energy more sensitively because of that. Told you he'd show up though, didn't I? Because it's his birthday. Weird. Anyway, let us continue. He's not saying anything, he's just standing about three feet behind me. Protecting you, yes. Okay, whatever delusion you have in, whatever dimension you're in now. Mama T doesn't live in delusions anymore. She lives in cold, hard facts. Go away with your fairy stories, Davidson. None of it was real. It's a cruel, cruel trick that was played on me. Sadistic and cruel. But that's on them. They will bear the consequences of their actions. Griol, quoting from copious and meticulous notes, also disclosed what the members of this remote hill tribe had told him about our own neighbourhood. Saturn, the body of limiting place, had rings around it. Earth's moon was barren and waterless. Jupiter had 4 large moons. Our sun's planets, just like the satellite stars of Sirius, moved in elliptical orbits. The Milky Way was a spiral galaxy of stars. Marcel Griol's posthumous work was published only in French. It attracted little attention beyond his own country. But 10 years after the book appeared, Griol was famous. In 1966, the distinguished academic Robert Temple happened by chance to read Griol's original paper on the Dogon tribe. Temple, a fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society and a member of the... Please don't put your hands on my shoulders. You're not welcome that level of intimacy. You're oppressing me. Honestly. Temple, a fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society and a member of the British School of Archaeology, was impressed by the Frenchman's painstaking scholarship. I'm not buying into your delusions, Davidson. They're lovely things you're saying to me, but they are not true. The evidence points to the contrary. He began his own research into the Dogon and their ancient traditions, which dovetailed so uncannily with modern discoveries. In 1976, Temple published a book, The Sirius Mystery, which surmised that the Nomai were extraterrestrials who came to Earth from a planet in the Sirius system. They made contact with the Babylonians, the Egyptians, and the forerunners of the Dogon, sharing their astronomical knowledge with the three civilizations. Temple's argument stirred a wasp's nest of skepticism. Chief among the critics was the astronomer Carl Sagan, who insisted that the mystery of the Dogon's allegedly ancient knowledge was easily solved. It was likely, he said, that tribal priests between 1925 and 1935 had spoken to visiting European missionaries who brought them up to date on Western astronomy's latest findings. The priests had then incorporated the data from dwarf stars and their density through to orbits into their religious tradition. Robert Temple counterattacked, publishing evidence in the form of a letter from the superior of the White Fathers in Mali that no missionaries had visited the Dogon before 1949, and it was 2 years earlier, 1947, that the tribal priests had shared their astronomical insights with Dr. Griol. Temple's supporters produced further arguments. Was it really feasible, they inquired, that Europeans in possession of the latest astronomical knowledge would rush to Africa to share it with a tribe of hill dwellers? And if indeed this had happened, how had the Dogon found time to incorporate the Syrian star charts into traditional artifacts ranging from pottery and statues to ceremonial masks? In any case, many of these artifacts were centuries old. On BBC TV's Horizon programme, Dr. Griol's colleague, Germaine Dieterlich, mentioned sure that was a different name earlier. Starting to trip out here. Trip and balls, people of Earth. Who does it mention Germaine Dieterlich before? Yes, here it's written as Dieter Len. Haven't gone insane. Now it's Dieterlich. Odd. Anyway, probably just a typo. Dismissed the skeptics' attempted debunkings as absurd. Marcel Griol had not been a science fiction writer. He was a serious anthropologist who, in scholarly fashion, had sought to share what he learned during 16 years among the Dogon, and Robert Temple had simply built on Griol's work. The debate stalled. Neither side had indisputable facts enough to win it. But within the tribe's tradition itself lay hope of an eventual resolution. The Dogon maps, supported by tribal law, specifically indicated that Sirius was orbited by 2 stars. So far, Western astronomers had not detected, let alone photographed, the purported second satellite of Sirius. If the presence of that third sun were proved, sorry, I'm being spoken to again. No, he does not love me, Davidson. That was not an act of love. If the presence of that third son were proved, no skeptic would be able to claim that the Dogon had heard about it from a missionary. In 1995, 2 French astronomers produced findings which may lead to a solution of the Sirius enigma. In the journal Astronomy and Astrophysics, David Binet and J.L. Duvant published an article, Is Sirius a triple star? They said they had measured perturbations in the Sirius system, which could be explained by a third sun, Sirius C, orbiting the mother star. They theorized that this as yet hidden body is a red dwarf, only about 0.05% the mass of Sirius B. Should the astronomers be proved right, the Dogon's 5,000-year-old belief in Emeya, the son of women, will be scientifically validated. And open-minded observers will then be entitled to ask how a tribal society without texts or telescopes obtained its information. Author saw Mars moon without a telescope. The Dogon were not alone in enjoying an inexplicable knowledge of the cosmos. In his novel, Gulliver's Travels, published 1726, Jonathan Swift offered a moderately detailed description of the 2 moons of Mars. The book appeared at a time when no one knew the Martian satellites existed, and when no telescope on Earth would have been powerful enough to detect them. Not until 1877, 150 years after Gulliver, did the US Naval Observatory astronomer Asaph Hall observe the moons, which would become known as Phobos and Deimos. Swift's narrative describes how Laputan scientists have discovered 2 lesser stars or satellites which revolve around Mars, whereof the innermost is distant from the centre of the primary planet exactly 3 of its diameters, and the outermost 5, the former revolves in the space of 10 hours, and the latter in 21.5, so that the squares of their periodical times are very near the same proportion with the cubes of their distance from the centre of Mars, which evidently shows them to be governed by the same law of gravitation that influences the other heavenly bodies. Swift somehow got the number of moons right. He accurately positioned them close to the planet, and their orbital periods, 10 hours and 21.5 hours, were not a light year distant from the moon's actual orbital times of 7.6 and 30.2. The French author Voltaire was possibly copying Swift when in 1750 he wrote Micromagus, the tale of a visitor from space who alerts humankind to the existence of the Martian moons. The fictional extraterrestrial hails from a planet orbiting Sirius. The Eye in Clarke's Sky. In 1968, the science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke experienced a leap of astronomical insight comparable to Jonathan Swift's vision of Mars. In chapter 35 of his novel 2001, A Space Odyssey, describes his protagonist, astronaut Bowman, discovering an eerie landmark on the Saturnian moon Japetus. It is an oval shape, brilliantly white, which seems almost to have been painted on the moon's surface. As he drops closer, the astronaut sees the ellipse as a vast empty eye, a black dot in its centre, staring up at him. The dot subsequently proves to be one of 2001's celebrated monoliths. Clarke's actual words were, he had half convinced himself that the bright ellipse set against the dark background of the satellite was a huge empty eye staring at him as he approached. It was an eye without a pupil, but nowhere could he see anything to mar its perfect blankness. Not until the ship was only 50,000 miles out and Japetus was twice as large as Earth's familiar moon did he notice the tiny black dot at the exact centre of the ellipse. In 1979, Voyager 1 transmitted the first photographs of Japetus to Earth. Clarke's friend, astronomer Carl Sagan, who was then working with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, sent him a print of one photo with the note, "Thinking of you." Stunningly, the picture showed a large, white, eye-shaped oval on the surface of Japetus. At the centre of the eye was a small, black dot. Clarke recalls this event in the preface to his 1982 novel 2010 Odyssey 2. At the time 2001 was published, Jupiter's moons were no more than pinpoints of light in the most powerful telescopes. And thus concludes today's readings of today's great mysteries of the modern world. Astonishing. Something to wrap my head around, actually. How people gain this knowledge without having actually been there physically or had powerful enough telescopes to see it with their own eyes. The mind is an incredible thing. We humans are incredibly powerful, capable of amazing feats of intellect and imagination, and physical feats as well. Anyway, it's a beautiful day today, people of Earth. The time is now 12:15 p.m. and I'm going to have a little bit of a rest, I think, before I go off to my debrief. And as always, I wish you all peace and joy and true love with your true beloved ones, who have your back, your front and your sides, and treat you with honour and decency, deep love and affection. Don't settle for less than that, people of Earth. Stay on your own, or get what you truly merit as a human being. Real loves. Settling for anything less than that is just a seeping, cancerous wound. And I've worked hard to get my life back in order. 30 years of therapy and getting off my psych meds 9 years ago almost, and fighting forwards as I've done every day of my life, being creative and forming connections with people. Some have been long-lived, like my closest friends, and some have just drifted off on their own journey through the cosmos, and that's okay. So Goddess bless, and wherever you are on earth, remember to never ever let the bastards grind you down, and have no fear, be of good cheer. The gods are truly and veritably here.